Hello, I'm Chris Ossman, and this is Solutions. Enough complaining, let's fix America. Today, I'm going to read excerpts from my book entitled Solutions. Enough complaining, let's fix America. I'm going to read from sections that I feel are very relevant to today, obviously relevant, but there are other subtle things that are included in what I'm going to read today that reflect what's going on in America that it seems that too few people realize is actually happening. They seem to be distracted with the riots and these things, which are, they're good causes, obviously, but there are things that underlie all of this activity. There are things that underlie why people are protesting, and that's what I want to get to. This is the section in the book that is actually entitled Solutions, and in that section, I go through the solutions that of the issues that I discuss in the book in an alphabetical order. So I will be going from U for unemployment down to W, which is war and wealth inequality and things of that nature. I will have sidebars in this discussion, and I will try to remember to say sidebar so that you know that I'm not reading from the book at that moment. And then I'll say returning to the book to get back to the book. So let's get started. This first section is under U. It's entitled Unemployment. To counter arguments for job creators, I would propose a series of changes to unemployment compensation that would benefit both employer and employee alike while saving the government and taxpayers money. First, do not give the job creators money up front for jobs that they have yet to create. Instead, provide a subsidy to those employers who have created jobs and put those subsidies on a graduated scale to entice employers to consider hiring the long and longer term unemployed. Sidebar. This is also related to a petition that I have online. Just Google the "In the Job Creator Lie," and you'll find my petition, which is not only petition, but it also has potential legislation that would basically end this myth that job creators are what creates jobs, or the things that we call job creators, which is basically another term for the rich. The rich do not create jobs out of thin air. Jobs are created out of a demand for their products and services. The higher demand, the more people they will hire to fulfill that demand. But they themselves do not create the jobs. If there was no demand, they're not going to create a job. So in the sidebar, back to the book. 1. For those who have been unemployed for 6 to 12 months, the subsidy would be a certain percentage to be announced. While those who have been unemployed for more than 12 months, the percentage would be greater to be announced. The reason for the higher subsidy would be due to the greater risk that an employer would perceive in hiring an individual who's been out of the workforce for such a long period. These subsidies would expire for every individual hired after a specific time. 3. To avoid abuses, measures would have to be taken to determine when an employer is simply laying off an individual in the program because the subsidy associated with that employee's position sunsets. One requirement would be that they retain all current employees unless a justifiable reason for termination can be provided to the agency who is overseeing the subsidies program. All right, next. Benefit to society for this type of program. 1. Our consumer-driven economy does better when there are consumers consuming. And when those consumers actually have jobs, they consume more than when they don't. This also goes to the fact that our government seems to be okay with giving trillions of dollars to the wealthy, but giving a one-time payment of $1,200 to everybody else. That only sees you through 1 month if you're lucky. Whereas the money that was given to the super wealthy is on a continual basis. They don't have to keep arguing for that money to be expended. But for the rest of us, the $1,200 paycheck, the check that we got, that was one time. And then for the next month, our Congress has to go back and argue again for more money. Now, who in their right mind would think that the Democrats are going to have an easy time with that argument? They should have got the money up front and allowed it to be renewed automatically so that you get $1,200, basically a UBI. every month because your bills don't stop after 1 month, as the Democrats seem to be assuming, because they control Congress. And they're the ones that basically have to oversee and okay this one-time payment plan. They control the budget as well. So back to the book. I'll just start back from number one. The benefit to society. One, our consumer-driven economy does better when there are consumers consuming. And when those consumers actually have jobs, they consume more than when they don't. Two, that money, which is currently going out as tax breaks to job creators, could be cut tremendously. As an example, take 100 unemployed individuals. If we give job creators tax breaks for all 100 of these unemployed individuals, that amounts to 100% of the subsidies allocated. If these jobs aren't created, as has been the case for far too many years, that's money that has basically gone into the pockets of these supposed job creators when no jobs were actually created. Under the plan outlined above, only those employers who actually create jobs would receive money for jobs created. So if only 20 jobs of the 100 in this example were created, then only 20% of the tax breaks for job creation would go out. The remaining 80% could be utilized to create public sector jobs or go towards reducing the deficit. Next, benefits to the employees or the unemployed. A job is created, and their resume will reflect this work, lessening the impact that the gaps in employment history has on so many of the medium and long-term unemployed. Now, the benefits to the employers. One, they get the subsidies that help their business lower overhead. Two, they fill a position that needed to be filled. Second, require that all recipients of unemployment who have been receiving the benefit for more than a specified time, maybe 3 months possibly, would be required to work 10 hours per week to maintain their benefits. Now, here's where that work plays an important part to society. At the current rate of compensation in Florida, $275 per week, that would amount to each individual in this program making $27.50 per hour if they were only required to work 10 hours a week. The remainder of the 30 hours that would amount to a 40-hour work week could be utilized by the job seeker to continue looking for work. Now, the benefits to society. One way in which this manpower could benefit the people is to require that the 10 hours of work be done at government offices initially. As our government has had to scale back its workforce, those employed by the government have found it increasingly more difficult to meet the demand of the public for certain services. Sidebar. For instance, I saw that there was a story about how much paperwork is piling up at some of these veteran administrations, to the tune that I think the one in Pennsylvania, the floors are actually bowing because of the weight of the paperwork that's backing up. And this is not some hyperbolic rhetoric that I'm speaking about. They actually measured it, and they saw that the floors were actually bowing, which there is some give in floors, but not to the extent that they showed. I'll provide a link below. Now back to the book. 2, the money is being paid out currently. So if people are required to do some work for these funds, especially work as described earlier, maybe they could work for the county, the city, or state, or federal, whichever agency needs, extra work. It is less likely that opponents of these funds can claim that this money is being wasted on lazy people who have no intention of working. So those politicians who talk about welfare and handouts, this negates that argument because they are working, and they're actually working to help society move forward by helping government agencies that are understaffed. And then now the benefits to the individual in this program. Those who are sitting at home are going to the library to fill the unemployment benefits online, and those who have to go to the unemployment office to get discouraged by the jobs offered in both instances. An actual job gives the individual purpose and keeps them involved in society. 2, Given the diversity of jobs offered by municipal, state, or federal agencies, the positions filled by the unemployed could prove to be suitable, if not exact, replacements for the type of jobs they lost. The benefits are here. 3. The individual keeps their skills home, no lag due to the ever-changing software used in business. An individual could remain relevant as their skills are maintained and improved at the part-time jobs offered in this program. 4. As these individuals continue to seek out permanent opportunities, they can avoid the problem that listing oneself as unemployed has caused in the recent past. Sidebar, I remember there was a point where employers were saying, if you are not currently employed, then don't even bother applying. So if we have this type of program where people are they continue to enjoy the employment, even if it's with the government, they can legally and honestly list that they are currently employed. So that problem of employers requiring you be currently employed before you even apply, that goes away. Okay, so back to the book. Employers can confirm that these individuals are currently employed. So any concerns of these individuals not having current skills or having skills that have waned due to underutilization are negated. Now, the next section is V. The first topic is voting. 1. Voting should be based solely on popular votes, and it should be weighted to avoid the need to extend the process. Each voter should choose their first, second, third, and so on until all candidates have been given a weighting. In ranked choice voting, the public is given more than a choice between the lesser of two evils, and it could be done within a two-party system. Instead of the two major parties, Republicans and Democrats, having a primary to narrow the field to two candidates, eliminate this intermediate step and give all candidates from all parties the opportunity to point out their strength as well as the shortcomings of the policies presented by their opponents. Sidebar, this also plays into this, what I call the really rally. You can go to my blog. It's called I Am the Number 2 Opinionated. Just look up I, the letter M, the number 2, and opinionated, and you'll more than likely find it. But there's a page on my blog which is called the Really Rally, where it explains how the Really Rally helps weed out weaker opponents or opponents who don't seem to have the best interest of the populace at heart. And it does it in a randomized way, but it also does it in a festive way. It might not be feasible now with the coronavirus. I mean, people would have to wear masks, obviously, to gather in this setting, but it does it in a festival-like atmosphere. And just go to the webpage. I'll provide a link below to that as well. Back to the book. 2. The means to conduct voting should be updated to a standard that represents mankind's advancements. All issues, including leadership, should be voted upon utilizing cell phones, personal computers, or some other electronic means that allows everyone of eligible voting age to cast their ballot. 3. A security dongle that generates a new number periodically should be provided to all who vote as a means to verify their ballot. 4. A secondary means of verification would be provided to verify one's vote after the fact. Perhaps paper ballots, a receipt, a text message, or email providing verification of your vote and your candidate's ranking at the time your vote was cast. 5. In all of these systems, there could be the requirement for a multiple-step authorization that would require verification of the numbers on the security dongles of two people you designate as parallel verifications. 6. The design of all voting equipment shall be compartmentalized as to avoid any one agency, organization, or corporation from understanding the system as a whole. The system as a whole will be greater than the sum of its parts. Next section is W, wages. It starts off with a quote. A society like America, in which the cost of nearly everything except for wages rises, is substantially unsustainable. End quote. If there is a single individual who cannot pay for the necessities of life because they have a job that does not pay enough to cover the cost of food, water, electricity, and shelter, it is a travesty. If there are millions who suffer from the same plight, it's a broken system. Any business with a business model like Walmart, in which there is a need for governmental assistance to subsidize the wages paid by that employer, needs to be phased out as an obsolete and unsustainable business model. Next section, Wall Street. Wall Street needs watchdogs and whistleblowers. All of the men, women, groups, or organizations that can be categorized as watchdogs or whistleblowers that expose the truth should be honored for their contribution to society. For this reason, they should all be rewarded for their efforts, especially when those efforts save lives. The roles that watchdogs and whistleblowers play or can play in society will be discussed within the section providing a solution for a particular issue or problem, but basically, as stated above, they should be rewarded when their efforts prove useful to or for the masses and those whose voice is underrepresented. Next section, this is still under W, and it's war. It starts with a quote. Quote, America is acting more like the four horsemen of the apocalypse than the shining city on the hill, because of the example we have set over recent years has been one of spreading pestilence, war, famine, and death. End quote. As America is involved in 6, 7, or 8 wars, shouldn't Americans question the need for such actions? Shouldn't we question the rationale of our acts of aggression, especially since none of the countries we bomb have attacked us? Shouldn't we at least 100, 200, or even 300 million of us question our government's intervention in the affairs of other sovereign nations? Why does it always seem as if we are the only country in the world that defends our allies? Why can't our allies overseas get together and defend themselves against aggressors? Is this even a possibility, or will those we call allies become enemies if they refuse our assistance? As I've said over and over, the plight we ignore could become our fate. When America's aggression becomes intolerable to the rest of the world and our contributions to humanity only perceived as detrimental, we will be forced to present our case for survival. The United States of America only comprises 5% of the world's population, but our leaders act as if the rest of the world should be beholden to them. This is, in a word, is tyranny, and the citizens of this country need to put an end to it. We will, after all, have to live with the consequences of those who represent us. The disease we have birthed, whether it be physical or of the mind, will eventually lead to a tipping point at which time we will lose control. The wars we pursue and start in the name of profit for a small minority have made America a jaded country where its citizens have lost all empathy as they ignore and even mock the plight of others. The famine with which we toy as we mire the soil of our homes in unnatural chemicals and unsustainable methods of agriculture. The death we share around the world under the auspices of humanitarianism, freedom, and security. Yes, it is America that is spreading this terror across planet Earth, and it is America that will be the final victim. As a warning about America's future, I leave you with a message from President Eisenhower. Quote, in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, where sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. End quote. I will provide the link to Eisenhower's speech. I think it was a video, but if not, it will either be a link to the transcript or to the video. Actually, both I'm reading. So the next section, wealth. A study should be conducted to determine the average minimum amount of money necessary for an individual's survival. Factors to be considered should be shelter, food, water, and whatever other resources are deemed necessary for simple survival. Based upon this survival number, a universal basic income should be determined, which will be utilized to create a wealth cap for all citizens, groups, organizations, and corporations residing in the United States. The wealth cap shall only take income into consideration as a means to create an equitable society. Any income, whether it be generated by an individual, group, organization, or corporation residing in the United States that exceeds the wealth cap, shall be subject to a fairness and equality tax. The revenue generated from this fairness and equality tax shall be utilized to provide sustenance to the poorest amongst us. Justification for such a tax is the patriotism that such a tax represents, as a nation is only as strong as the weakest or poorest of its citizens. As proof of this, I present America during World War II and the decades that followed, when more citizens experienced increased equity and prosperity, which allowed the United States of America to become the wealthiest nation Earth has ever known. Now, juxtapose this growth in equity with what will result from the hoarding America is currently experiencing. America loses its standing as that shining city on the hill. Now, there will be links provided. And instead of being viewed as the biggest threat to world peace, which is America is currently, because a lot of polls show that people around the world consider America to be one of the biggest terrorists in the world, if not just simply a threat. There will be a link provided. And worse still, as the biggest perpetrators of what our leaders have claimed they sought to eradicate, terrorism. There you go. There's a link provided. In a time when more than half of this nation's discretionary budget, more than $500 million, goes to our military, we have 41 million citizens experiencing food insecurity on a daily basis. Link below. It's time to put an end to this. It's time to strengthen our nation by strengthening the least amongst us. It's time the wealthy show true patriotism by helping end starvation, impacting those to 13% of our people. It's time to make our own citizens a higher priority than the profits made on war, oil, water, deforestation, and the plethora of ways in which wealth is destroying the planet. Now, if the excessive income of the wealthy doesn't cover the bill, then we must consider more drastic ways in which to increase revenue to strengthen this nation. If patriotism can be used for over 16 years as a reason to keep America involved in wars that don't secure this country, then it can most certainly be used as a reason to house, feed, and clothe our citizenry. If national security can be used as an excuse for those same wars, then national security should suffice as a reason to take care of the poorest amongst us, given that they too are part of this nation. Next section. The rich. 1. No judgment will be made of the wealthy unless their actions can be proven to have caused harm to others. 2. The wealthy convicted of crimes against others must provide restitution to those who suffered at their hands. This restitution shall be on a graduated scale, respected of their proximity to the injured party, as well as the crime itself, figuratively. Anyway, those are some of the solutions that I offered in my book, which came out in 2018. But like I said, a lot of this stuff is the culmination of articles and posts that I've put online over the past 9 or 10 years. Anyway, join me again for another Solutions. Enough complaining. Let's fix America.